Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Todd Armstrong. And before we get going with the show at all, I want to talk about a few of the upgrades I have. So, the last few episodes were audio only because I was having issues recording. The audio would just, my microphone would just go off for random times. So the last two episodes, I just did audio only so that I could figure out my recording issues. So I got a whole new setup here, and hopefully I shouldn't have any more recording issues. So there's lots of stuff going on with that. I do want to say that episode 5, putting that out and talking about that just released so much energy, so much pent up negative energy that was inside me. And I now realize that it was a source of so much of my shame and guilt and all those traumatic feelings that come with that were built up, and so much of my anger and hatred towards the rest of the world was to protect myself from any trauma that could happen to me similar to that. So I developed a personality so that I wouldn't be in a position to be taken advantage of again. So that released a lot of energy for me, and I felt it in a huge way. It was like this weight was lifted off of me, even though it's something that I didn't remember on a regular basis. It's not something that I would just lay around thinking about all the time. I mean, it's like a suppressed memory almost. But I mean, I didn't not think of it on purpose, but I guess it just happens over the course of time. And you never really deal with it. You just let it keep going until it shapes you. I guess that's the best way I could put it. So, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'll give a brief rundown. So, episode 1 was about me and like different stuff happening to me as a teenager and how I made some bad decisions and all that. Then episode 2 was about my addiction and my relationship with my ex fiance, who was the mother of my daughter. Then episode 3 was about entertainment and sports, particularly, and music, and how they shaped me and how they influenced me into becoming the person that I was. And then episode 4 was about jail life and all the different things that occurred while I was locked up. And then a little bit at the end, I talk about another relationship with a friend that stabbed me in the back, pretty much, was the way that I felt it when I was speaking about it. I felt, this energy that someone was stabbing me in the back as I said it, and it was like I kind of released that as well in episode 4. It was like something got pulled out of my back. It was like while I was recording, it was pretty cool actually. But so that was episode 4. Then episode 5 was about how uh, I was, um, I don't want to necessarily say molested, but how I was sexually active with a friend who introduced me to it, I'll say, at like 6 or 7 years old, maybe even 5. I don't really remember exactly when it started. And my girlfriend was asking me questions about it later on. I don't know how long it went on for, like what exactly it was, what age group or anything, but I do some of the specifics I said, like about first grade, and also what it had to be before that. So I was probably 6, maybe even 5. I don't really remember. But about how my life was then shaped by this sexual uh, deeds that I did, and how that I viewed life so much as from a sexual standpoint, that everything was about pleasing my sex organ, my sacral chakra. For those of you who are spiritual, it was all about sex, everything. And it's not an ideal thing to be spending your time trying to get after. So that was a little rundown of episodes 1 through 5. So episode 6, this episode is going to be about the rest of the things that I haven't mentioned yet, about giving you a feel for who I am and why I was the way that I was, and why I even think that I'm worthy of having a podcast, of all the things that I've overcome, because people overcome things all the time. So why do I think that I should have a podcast? Why does it matter that I speak? Well, I just have experienced a lot of darkness, and I've overcome a lot of different darknesses. So that's what, after this episode, we're going to spend the next few episodes, not sure how many yet. In the next few episodes, I'm going to talk about all the goodness and how I overcame addiction, how I overcame weight loss, how I overcame cigarettes, how I overcame sex addiction and porn, and how I overcame all these different things. So, I'll go pretty in depth about how you can overcome all these different things and the benefits that overcoming these things will have on you. Not just on you, but on others around you, because of your relationships will heal, and your life will just start to fall together. Everything will just start to come into place when you start allowing the good to overcome the evil, or the darkness, I should say, the good to overcome the darkness. So now, to kick off episode 6, I do want to preface this by saying that everything in this podcast, not just this episode, but everything in this podcast is from my perspective. It is my truth. It is the way I see things, or the way that I remember things, exactly as best as I can. I try to be as accurate as I can with everything that I say. I feel it's very important to me to be accurate. So while I do know that I have biases and that I have my own perception, it is still nearly impossible to get rid of your own bias and your own perception in order to tell a story from everybody's perspective, from a larger point of view. So with that being said, you can take it with a grain of salt. You don't have to believe anything I say. Everything I've said and everything I could say could be a lie. None of it could be true. You would have no idea. You don't know who I am. I'm just a guy talking. So whatever. You don't want to believe me, that's fine. And if you think that I am exaggerating somewhat, or maybe it's not putting someone in more of a better light than I should have, I mean, that's all fine and well. But for me, for what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm just trying to give you guys all the information exactly as I say it. So now I said at episode 6 I wanted to touch on all the things that made me the way I was, not necessarily made me the way I was, but my influences. The things that were around me that influenced me to become a certain way. So I want to start with ever since I was a little child. I remember my parents fighting all the time and yelling and screaming and name calling. Not so much hitting, not so much anything physical, but it was always emotional, and it was always mental. You know, uh, I don't want to say everything, but to put it uh, bluntly, I was yelled at and I was made to feel like I was inefficient at everything I did. It really made me feel that way, that somehow I wasn't good enough and that uh, everything could always be better. So I guess, in that sense, I still have that mentality that everything can be better. And I am, I guess, open to criticism now because I know that there is a better way, because there always is better, and you can always do more and you can always be better and all that. So now it's a benefit to me, but growing up, it's not. When you think you're never enough, when you think you have to be perfect, and it's just not good. And you know, growing up in a house where everybody's yelling, that's the form of communication, is yelling. I've had people over my house when I was a kid, and they're like, "Man, I thought my house was crazy, but your house is way worse than mine," and they joke about it. And I always had friends over, and my brother would have friends over, and we were 4 years apart. But my little brother would have friends over. My eldest brother, I don't remember him ever having friends over. Maybe one or two, but he was, he didn't really do much as a teenager anyway. So, I had people over a lot, and that was cool. But it was also, my house was crazy. People were just always yelling about something. That was the only acceptable form of communications. Not the only acceptable, but it felt like it. It felt like there would be like a rule written somewhere where it's like the default go-to mode is yell and belittle. And that's what it was for so long. And the worse I became as a person, the worse that it got. And not just towards me, but uh, my parents towards each other. And it was just all this. And it was, my mom always fighting with all my brothers and my dad. And my dad didn't want to hear it. So then he wouldn't, he would fight with her because he didn't want to hear it, because she was wrong and he didn't want to say you're being wrong in front of the kids. So he would just stay out of it. But she would just go on and on and on, and would never let go of anything, and would just belittle you and say the meanest things to you. And it really, really hurts, as a little child. And I don't want to make this sound like I'm some kind of victim or something, but when you're a child and you're growing up and you're hearing yelling and belittling all the time, well, when you grow up, what's going to happen? You're going to yell and you're going to belittle. When you have a mate, when you're old enough and you have a mate, how are you going to treat them? Like, what was your influence? What do you know? You know your experience, right? And what my experience was this thing that I didn't want. I always said that I didn't want to get married because I always felt that my dad should have left my mom a very long time ago, and he never did, which is I guess kudos to him. I don't know. Not that I don't love my mom, I do, but my mom's a difficult person, probably the most difficult person I've ever met. And it's always been so contentious. Uh, it's never can be a discussion between us. It's, and, the most angering part for me, the most maddening part for me is when she's belittling me and yelling at me and calling me names because she's telling me that I'm a bad father to my daughter. And she's telling me how to parent my daughter when she's belittling me as if I'm not her child. It's like somewhere along the line, she forgot I was her child because she did have my daughter while I was in jail. My daughter's mom didn't have her. My parents had my daughter. And so they raised her, and throughout that whole time. And I guess the lines got blurred, and somewhere along the line, she started treating me as if I wasn't her child anymore, that as if I was an ex partner of hers, and that Maya was her daughter instead of her granddaughter. And she just forgets, I feel like, because there's no way that any person would try to relay a message to someone in such a way, in such a hypocritical fashion. Belittling your son, telling him he's a bad father and not a good person because you think that how he's raising his daughter is not the way that you would raise her. And it's like the most hateful things that she'll say. I don't want to get into details and everything, but this is still current day. This is she always has belittled me, and she doesn't listen to me. Or I'll say, could you apologize for something? And she'll say, yeah, but you didn't apologize, as if, it needs an apology from me in order for her to apologize. She can't ever just do something on the merit of it's supposed to be done this way. I'm saying I'm sorry because I'm genuinely sorry. I don't need an apology from you. I just want to tell you that I'm sorry because I was wrong. And no matter what the reason was that I did it, I can justify it in a million different ways. And I can tell you that I acted out of line because you acted out of line and this and that. But it's never that. It's always a qualification. Like, well, you remember I did all this for you, and you just get so caught up, or she gets so caught up in keeping score that she doesn't even know what game's being played. That we're trying to heal ourselves, we're trying to become better. We're not trying to sit there and harp on all the past times about everything. And just apologize and move on. It doesn't need more than, you don't need someone to apologize to you in order for you to apologize. So, that's the type of relationship that we had. And I can say for sure that was definitely when what happened to me, and that I talked about in episode 5, I started realizing since then that I was probably running from that as the memories of that, the trauma of that, when I was 10, 11, 12, 13. And I didn't have a loving person there for me to tell. So my girlfriend said to me, she goes, well, did you ever think of telling somebody? And I don't think I did. I don't think I ever had the thought of telling someone because I would have been afraid of being belittled and, uh, getting in trouble for it. There was a time that I was one time climbing a fence at my buddy's and I slipped and my wrists, and I'll show it for the camera. I don't know if you're not going to be able to see. There's two little, uh, you can't really see on the camera, but there's two little lines because I slipped and I was hanging from the fence by my wrist, by the flaps of my skin, and blood started running down the fence. And that's how I knew, because I didn't even feel it. But that's how I knew, is the blood started running down the fence. My buddy's like, "Oh, hey, are you okay?" And I looked up and I had to like pick my hand up off the fence. So anyway, I thought I was going to get in trouble. I was gushing blood. We had to go to the hospital and everything. Uh, but my buddy's mom just like, she gave me towels and like to soak up the blood, and then just like sent me home, and I walked home, and I was afraid I was going to get in trouble. So I went up to my room and like laid on the floor. I guess kind of to signal that I was in distress so that she would subconsciously know when she saw me, and she did. And we went to the hospital. But I was afraid to go to her and tell her what happened. So what did I tell her happened? I told her I was rollerblading at the bank down the street in their parking lot, and that I fell, like this, and went into some nails that were laid out, fell face first and put my hands out to brace myself, and nails just happened to be there and perfectly went in my body. So, that's the type of fear of and trouble I had from telling my mom something. And that was something stupid, and it was something I got hurt by, but I would have been called stupid. I would have heard, well, why would you do something so stupid? Why, all of those types of things. So I instead of that, I just lied and told her, made up a story, because I was afraid of the truth. And, my dad, I guess because he never really received any love from a man anyway. I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't there when he was a child, but I didn't receive. I My father's relationship and I was never anything. Was never warm and friendly and loving. There are three words that would not describe our relationship. But I wouldn't say that we have a bad relationship either. But my dad is not the type of guy that I've ever felt I could go to about uh, anything sexual, anything emotional. Like what I knew I could talk to my dad about was like building stuff and sports, and uh, that's it. Work and chores. That's pretty much all I was comfortable talking to my dad about. So, uh, so that wasn't an option. Neither of my parents was an option to tell. So, that's the mindset that I had at maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. But that's based off of, my mindset grew into be that from watching and experiencing my life as it unfolded. And obviously, I was a willing participant at some point, right? Some point early on, I'm sure. But that's uh, that's not, that shouldn't matter. But I know if my mom hears this, she's going to be having all these excuses and saying I'm such a bad person and all this, and that I'm blaming this on her, and that's not what I'm doing at all. But I know that's how she's going to react, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the way things go when people are afraid of the truth and they can't handle it, they can't hear it, and then they start lashing out and they do every mean thing that they can in order to get you upset, I guess, because in some way that's supposed to make the truth more bearable, or just so that they can forget about the truth, I guess, is probably what's really going on there. So they don't have to think about the truth, so they can think about everybody else and how everyone else is out to get them and everyone else is this and that. And you never have to face yourself that way. And you never take accountability or responsibility. You just keep telling yourself over and over all these things that everyone else is out to get you. And it's always everyone else. Until one day you finally decide to point the finger at yourself, because we're all in control of our own actions. Which leads me to my next point, is how much of a thief that I was, and how much of a liar I was, and how good I was at both. Now, I wasn't a pickpocket. Excuse me, I wasn't a pickpocket, but I was, pretty close with how good I got at stealing things under people's noses without them knowing. I just got good at it. And obviously it's not something I'm proud of, but it was something that I practiced a lot. I had a lot of drugs. I had a big drug habit for a long time. I needed to feed the beast somehow, and that's how I did it, was with stealing. And then the lying, I almost perfected lying. I became a master liar. And it was just, I could completely fabricate a story out of thin air that would be believable. And because I had a good memory, if someone asked me about it later on, I would remember the lie. So that's probably what my biggest benefit to lying, not benefit, but my, how I got to be so good at it, was my memory. So that when someone would ask later, or we would, ask the same question in another way, I would keep the same answer, because I would see what they were doing and I would answer it the same way. So I became very good at doing very bad things, stealing and lying and yelling and being angry and name calling and fighting. I got in so many fights. Me and a friend of mine, we got in fist fights from the age of like 6 to like 14. We probably got like 40 fist fights. We would play hockey, street football, all the local neighborhood kids. We get in a fist fight every time over something. We were so competitive with each other. We got in fist fights all the time. And then, once I grew up from fist fighting the neighborhood the kids, well, it's just the one, him and I were so competitive with each other. But once we stopped fighting each other, we became friendly. He moved away and we stopped fighting each other all the time. But we always were the best too at all the sports. So we'd play each other basically and everything. We'd always be the captains of, whatever we were playing. And I pretty much win all the time. But that's neither here nor there. So I would get in a lot of fights. So if you picture this now, a 14-year-old kid who grew up with, getting yelled at all the time, being belittled, cursing, had all these anger issues and traumatic events, and started being sexually active at a young age. So now I'm 14 years old. I'm covered in pimples. I have such a bad attitude. I have just so many things. I don't have a good cleansing habit. I didn't take care of my teeth all that well. I just my room was disgusting. I had clean clothes everywhere, dirty clothes everywhere, food, trash everywhere. Just so gross. And so what type of person is that? That's a gross person. So then I go out and I put on this smile, with my friends. And, that's the happiest I am is when I'm hanging out with my friends and I'm not being yelled at, I'm not being belittled. Uh, and we're probably, smoking some cigarettes. So I'm feeling cool because I'm feeling older and, trying to get some girls, listening to music, watching something that we probably shouldn't have been watching, all doing drugs, drinking, whatever. So that's when I was always at, at my best. But then, so what happens when there's one group of kids doing this, and then there's another group of kids doing the same thing, and they're the same type of way. So what happens? There ends up being big fights because 14-year-old kids, all they know how to do is you know fight and masturbate. There's not too much going on in a 14-year-old boy's mind. Sad to say, and it's not for all of them, but that's two of the major ones. So we used to get in fights all the time. We get in big group fights with other groups of kids, uh, where there would be, just one-on-one fights a lot. We'd fight adults a lot. I remember we used to, as 14-year-olds, we beat up some adults a few different times. And like, I don't mean like we jumped them. I mean like one-on-one type situations. Like we fought, we we were about that life at that time. We didn't use weapons really. It wasn't any guns. It wasn't. I did have a buddy got stabbed a bunch of times, but just on one incident, he got stabbed a bunch of times. But it wasn't usually with any weapons. Usually it was just fists and feet. I mean, it happens. So you have all that pent up rage, and knowing what I know now, I can see why all that stuff was happening to me. It was all because of me. I was all doing it to myself the entire time. It was just the way I perceived everything, because I perceived life as bad, so it went that way. And it got worse and worse and worse until I stopped perceiving it that way. But anyway, yeah, so I was always, that's what we were doing. We were fighting, we were drinking, smoking cigarettes, smoking weed. I did ecstasy a bunch of times as a 16-year-old, which will put holes in your brain if you're too young doing that stuff, which I was too young doing it. And I'm sure that it definitely decayed my brain in certain spots that maybe they were underdeveloped or they hadn't began to be developed yet. But I definitely stunted my growth with all the stuff that I did, which ultimately led me to prison, because all this is all done to me on purpose. I did this to myself, all of this on purpose, in order to experience everything I experienced so that I could be where I am now at this day and age, at this time and date, because I felt before I came into my life, I felt that it was important for me to experience all these things. So while it is unfortunate that things had to go down this way, I guess I'm glad in a sense that they did, because then if I didn't, I wouldn't be here where I am now and being able to tell my tale. So let's see, is there anything else that I should run? Oh, music, loud music, the most gangster music I could listen to, always pumping it outside to all the neighbors, yeah, as a child, even 12, 10, I would turn my speakers up all the way and then face them so they're outside so that the entire neighborhood could hear it. And then when I got a car, I got the system, and I always had my music as loud as could be. So now, of course, I play my Jesus music very loud. I always told myself, I was like, man, you are playing all that bad stuff for everybody to hear. Don't be ashamed now that you're playing Jesus music about Jesus Christ. Don't be guilty now. Don't hide from the light. You were showing all that darkness. You better show the light. So I play it loud. I don't have a system or anything, but I play it, loud and proud. I'll walk around sometimes with my phone just playing in my pocket. Not all very loud, but loud enough for people to hear walking by. But that's in the coming episodes. I'll get into all that. Yeah, so the loud music. Oh, and I didn't in Bread and Circus, I didn't touch on the movies and TV. But I was very big into movies and TV shows, certain TV shows, excuse me, Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, The Wire, I watched all those. I didn't watch them when they came out, but I have seen all them. They were really good shows. Everything that people watched, I would always watch all of it. And I was very into it, to the point that I watched so many movies over when I was a truck driver. I got a portable DVD player. This is like Netflix was out and I had Netflix, but this was, just at the early stages of that. This is 2012. So I got a portable DVD player, and every time I stopped at a truck stop, I would check out their DVDs and buy maybe one, maybe two, maybe three, whatever. If they have a sale, whatever. I watch a lot of movies that way. But the thing is, once you buy them once, then you're done with it. So, but I did watch a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows that way because I had a TV on my truck. So I would get some seasons of things, and I did have Netflix too. But like I said, internet wasn't the best back then. Going cross country anyway. Yeah, so I think that may be it. I was real heavy at a point, and I'll touch all this different stuff. I'll get deeper into all these things and how I overcame them. But I just want to mention it. I was 280 pounds, almost 275 pounds, and now I'm like 190. But I was always skinny, and then I blew up because I loved milkshakes from McDonald's. Strawberry milkshakes from McDonald's was big for me, but not just there, but milkshakes in general. But that was always my favorite, was strawberry milkshake from McDonald's with whipped cream and a cherry. So I get them all the time. Or Wawa, if anyone knows what Wawa is, they had these shakes too. They were caramel, Bananas Foster they're called. They're so good. But I was getting them all the time and eating hot wings and French fries and drinking soda. I got real fat, and I wasn't playing sports anymore because my daughter was just born, so I was working, and it was just, it was just that I guess I didn't realize how big I was getting until I was big. And then, when I became a truck driver is when I lost the majority of the weight, and it came off very easily. All I did was stop putting in all the bad stuff, and it stopped happening. Let's see what else. Oh, I had a ton of acne, and since I know what I know now, I realize that the acne is probably a representation of all my bad characteristics. I had all these characteristics, ugly things right out at the surface. Yeah, I had horrible acne, and I got made fun of brutally by the kids. And I was supposed to be one of the popular ones, one of the leaders, so to speak, or whatever. And our school growing up, our elementary school was small, but I got made fun of a lot, badly, by the girls especially. I remember I used to get picked on by these two girls. They weren't friends with me and my friends. There's different levels of cliques or whatever. They weren't part of the girl clique that hung out with us. And I guess they reveled in making fun of me because they did really badly, and it hurt. I guess to this day, obviously, it's still on my mind while I'm doing this podcast, or enough on my mind anyway. Not that I think about these things often, but it did. It hurt getting made fun of for acne, and that's not. I mean, I didn't really have good hygiene practices. Not that I didn't try to. I would wash my face and all. It's just I just wasn't using the right stuff, I guess. I don't know exactly what it was, but uh, those things hurt. So, I didn't really participate in picking on other kids. I did sometimes, but from my friends, I would, we pick on them. But, kids outside of our little clique, I never really picked on them. I had an issue with people who would make fun of someone who was mentally challenged, or any kind of deformity or any kind of handicap. I was never okay with that. So, I guess I have one moral bone in my body, you could say. But the rest of my morals were shot, from a young age, seeing what love is, and my parents didn't say I love you to me as a child. Not, I mean, probably as a small child they did, and they probably, obviously they have throughout my life. But it's, sometimes I would think, like, if I went to sleep at a friend's house and we were going to bed, and the mom would be like, all right, good night, love you, and they say love you. That wasn't at my house. It was good night, good night. Both my parents, just good night. And I always thought to myself, I was like, when do I want to say love you? So then, I started making an effort to make sure that I say it to them, which I guess has led them to say it more often. I'm not taking credit for it or anything, but they used to not say it at all. I remember this, it's a strong memory of mine, for at least a good portion of my preteen years and throughout my teenage years. I don't remember. Probably, younger than that too, but I don't really remember that far back. But I remember specifically having that thought a few times, of hearing a friend's mom say "love you," and mine. I'm always wondering, like, why mine didn't. Uh, but I think that might be just about everything that I have. Uh, Trying to rack my brain here to see if there's anything else. I don't think so. I think I pretty much covered how big of a scum, how big of a piece of trash that I really was, and that I deserved to go to jail, absolutely, and I deserved all that bad stuff that happened to me because I was doing bad things. I was reaping what I was sowing. I just didn't know that's what I was doing because I wasn't familiar with the rules of this game called life, which this thing called life is a game, and there are rules to it, and it operates very much like a video game. So at that time, I just wasn't aware of what was going on, but I was deserving of it all. I did it all. I made all the decisions that I made, and there's no turning back from any of it. There's no changing it. There's no, what ifs. That's what happened. And that's it. I guess I could talk about my relationship with my brothers was always good. I remember my older brother, he used to beat me up a lot, and he would hit me with some weapons, and it would hurt. One time he threw a big thick thesaurus, like that big, that thick, at my eye. Boom, gave me a black eye. I remember another time he slammed my face into the shower faucet at home and gave me a black eye. I remember there was this big old pipe, probably like this thick around, and I mean it was like 20 feet long, but it wasn't very heavy, and no one lived next door to us, but this pipe was there. And then he picked it up one time, and it was heavy for how old we were. I was probably like, I don't know, 4 or 6 or something, somewhere around there, very young still. So he was probably like 8 to 10. So it was very heavy for him. He shouldn't have been picking up. But then I don't know if he purposely did it or what, but he hit me on the head with it. And then, that shit, like, I have like a dent on top of my head now. I always, since I was a child, I've had this dent. So, well, I guess that's probably everything. All right. Well, now you know all of my darkness, all of my traumas. I tell you all of that so that you will trust me with telling me your stories, because I came clean about just about everything that I possibly could. I was not good. I wasn't a very good person in any way. I wasn't a very good father. I wasn't a very good boyfriend to or fiance. I wasn't a very good son. I wasn't a very good brother. I guess you could say I was a good friend. I was loyal to I guess, now I say, the wrong things, but I was loyal, and I was a good friend, I guess. I was there for them when they needed, so I guess you could say that. But now you know all of my darkness, all of my past, all of my traumas, all the things that made me who I was. And over the next couple episodes, I'm going to now tell you who I am and how I became that way. And I look forward to now getting to the goodness, overcoming the darkness. And if you notice, if anyone's watching the video, you can see I got this little virtual background. So that's why it keeps, glitching out. It's because I got the virtual background, because I got the new setup, and I don't have a background right now that I could use. So I'll just use this virtual one. And what you see, it's brown. It's just a curtain. It keeps, because my shirt's black, I guess, and the microphone's black, it keeps popping in and out. It's whatever, the lighting. All right, well, that's all I got. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can. Oh, I forgot. I didn't even talk about the website. So I have a website now, and you can go to mytinyurl.com/goodness goodness-over-darkness. So that's mytinyurl.com/goodness-over-darkness. And you go on there, you can find all my podcast episodes. It's right down the middle. And then on the right-hand side, you can find it's linked to my Facebook. It'll say Facebook on there. You just click on that, and it'll bring you to the podcast. Has a Facebook now. Has a little Facebook group. It's same logo, same name, Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. Go ahead and send me a friend request, and I'll invite you in. You can also send me, Todd Armstrong, a friend request. I also have the logo as my main picture. I do have a YouTube channel as well, which I'm going to start posting different things on. So you can look for me on there. And it's, again, Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. Right now, I think there's only one video on it, but that link is also on my website. So right on my website, it'll say Facebook, YouTube, and then under that, I have 2 episodes of shows, that I was interviewed on. So I have episode 16 with Todd Armstrong from The Wrong Warp. That's with my buddy Ketsu Band. The Wrong Warp. That's a really good podcast. I suggest to check it out. And then under that is episode 5 of my buddy Alex Coleman's podcast, Recovering Thought Addict. So you can check those out. Also, if you sign up for Ketsu Band, he has a 1UP club where has secret shows are uploaded onto. Anyways, 2 hours and like 45 minutes longer than what we did on the podcast. So the podcast was about an hour, 15 minutes. Then we went for about 2 hours and 45 minutes on the secret show. And that we got in depth into some stuff. So if you're interested in anything about simulation theory, or if you are already awake spiritually and you're looking for something to get a grip of, I would go check that out. And I was episode number 5 of the secret show. That was a great episode. I love doing that. And I loved doing Alex Coleman's Recovering Thought Act. We talked for about 2 hours and 45 minutes. And that was up there. That's up there now. And that's a really good episode too. He's been in the middle of some stuff, but he's going to be uploading it to his podcast RSS feed soon. But he's been doing some stuff of his own and hasn't got it up there yet. And I'm going to, as soon as Amy Valaire from Third Eye Awakening, as soon as she puts out my interview with her, I will add that to my website as well. And you just go to the website, boom, just click the link, and you can go to all my stuff. I don't have a Twitter or anything yet, but I have the website, the Facebook, the YouTube, and my podcast. It should be available on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn app, Podbean. I forget which other ones. I'm having trouble with Apple Podcasts. I gotta talk to Podbean about that. But everything else will be coming in the next coming weeks. So I'm just waiting on everybody to email me back and approve it. But there we go. Some exciting stuff. I got a whole new computer set up. I got a new webcam. And I have my computer in a place, because before it was just a Chromebook, which was not very conducive to doing a podcast. So that's why there was no editing in episodes 2 and 3. Well, it's the second and third episodes I ever did of a podcast. And even now, this one still isn't all that good. But hey, I'm still doing it, and I'm still getting better. I'm going to continue to get better every time I turn on this mic. All right. So as I was saying, if you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email at thegreatchakraawakening777@gmail.com. Oh, and also, if the website, the original link is the Great Chakra Awakening 777.podbean.com. So I just made the tiny URL because I figured it might be easier to remember. But the Great Chakra Awakening 777 at gmail.com is my email. And that was an email address that I had for my old Facebook page before Facebook deleted me. And that's why this hat was made. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna keep that. A friend of mine got this hat for me for Christmas, got it made for me, and I love it. I wear it all the time. And I kept the email address, and I was like, that's what I'm going to use for my podcast. So if anyone's wondering why, it's, that's why. That's what it's in remembrance of. All right, so yeah, give me your emails. Come on, share your stories of goodness overcoming the darkness. I want to hear about your weight loss, your drug addiction, your beating homelessness or poverty, your overcoming an abusive parent, overcoming an abusive relationship, anything that you want to tell, that you think that your story can help somebody, because that's what this is all about. This is about telling stories to help to help people get through the bad parts of their lives, because that's what helped me. So that's what I want to do. I want to bring that to everybody. So go ahead and send me your emails, look me up on Facebook, like, share, whatever, do all that stuff, subscribe, do whatever that you want to do to get the information out there. But, help out your fellow man by using your experience as maybe the launching pad for their spiritual awakening. All right, everybody. Well, that was all I have for episode 6. So I'll catch you on episode 7 when the goodness starts to win. Goodbye, everybody.